Hello and welcome to MindGourmet. My name is Nina Kaiser. I'm the co-founder of MindGourmet and, as always, your host today. My today's guest is Tim Shields, the author of a book I so loved reading. In fact, I actually devoured it. It's A Curious Year in the Great Vivarium. No, it's called Vivarium Experiment, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't care how.
yeah, I didn't know how to pronounce that. Sorry. So it's a curious year in the Great Vivarium Experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Tim. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting.
Oh, it's exciting for me too, and especially when I'm stumbling across my own German tongue already in the beginning of an interview. So I'm sorry for that.
Oh, it's perfect.
And before we are fully jumping into our conversation, I'm going to introduce you a little to our audience. Tim Shields is the author of A Curious Year in the Great Vivarium Experiment. In addition to writing his own book, he also helps people develop book proposals, as well as write and edit books, which has included editing two New York Times bestselling authors' books. Prior to making his living as a professional writer, he spent more than 15 years freelancing as a writer for Seattle marketing and ad agencies. Born with a curious mind and restless spirit, Tim has answered the call of the creative muse wherever it has summoned him. Whether playing in a band, taking improv and acting classes, volunteering at an orphanage in Tanzania, buying one-way tickets to India and Mexico, or attempting to create his own travel show in Europe, his interests can be found at the intersection of creativity, expression, travel, and expansion. To top it all off, in just a few days, he will be taking off on another adventure by moving down to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, for a while to work on his next book. So how is it to talk about this book while you're writing already the next one?
Well, the next one will just be a continuation of that. So in my mind, I've kind of created, I wasn't really going to share it publicly, but I have already once. So I'm kind of thinking of it as the consciousness trilogy. So it's the evolution of this character's consciousness. But really, providing everything works the way it does, I'm actually not. Well, let's not say me. My character is living in the fourth book. But so I guess that would be a quadric or something. But so hopefully, yeah. But I know how they all connect, and I know the titles of them all, and really it's just like a vehicle to share my learnings about consciousness, life, love, loss, nature of reality, things like that. But hopefully in a very accessible way. So, not in a too heady way that people can't get.
Oh no, I just loved it was like an adventure that you took me on. And most of the time I really felt beyond time and space. Sometimes it scared me. It so often incredibly inspired me, and you have, to my perception and reading, what I like in reading, you have a very beautiful poetic style of writing, and this is why I found so many beautiful quotes and paragraphs in your book that later on I would like to ask you about. But right now, so how did it all come about? What were the things that led you to writing this book, and what is Thomas's story and this interesting title, especially the Vivarium, about?
Mm-hmm. Well, I pretty much decided I wanted to be a writer at about age 17. So I've been working on this craft in one way or the other for however many years. And I think I'm on my 53rd journal or something like that. And I started writing September 29th, 1991. So I've been practicing, but I had a bunch of different failed attempts. Like I wrote a terrible screenplay, and then, I wrote this and that. And at one point, I took off I had a job and a relationship end in the same week, I think in about 2006. So I was kind of like, oh, maybe life is trying to tell me something. So, and I wanted to be of service in some way. And I knew that to have the right interesting things, you have to do interesting things. So I took off to Tanzania for 2 months and I volunteered in an orphanage. And after that, I was working on a book proposal about sort of my experience also with the founder's experience, who was this woman from Long Island who just found herself starting this incredible orphanage and organization that actually a decade later, 60 Minutes, which is the biggest news show in the United States, did a story on it. So I knew I was onto something and it was a special place. But I started, I wrote a book proposal and I started sending it out to literary agents, and I would get feedback and then I would kind of freak out and I'd rewrite it and then I'd send it out and pull it back. It was like this thing that I was scared to kind of put out in the world. And for about the course of almost a decade, my parents were sick. My mom was like slipping with Parkinson's and dementia, and my dad had lung cancer. So when my dad passed away, my mom went to a nursing, assisted living, and then a nursing home. And so I spent the better part of a decade kind of going back to New Jersey on my vacations. So then when she passed away, I just kind of, I was like, okay, this is my time. And I was already over that story about Tanzania because I had become a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided, okay, I'm going to buy a one-way ticket to India, and I'm going to find the next story, because I've always had this thing that I wanted to express. I just needed to find the form and the vehicle to get it out there. And I mean, I still like, I find it to be a small miracle that this book is out in the world, because it was a lot to do it, and I stopped and started a bunch of times, and I was like, this is terrible, nobody's going to want to read this. And you know, but you just have to, like anything in life, you just have to keep doing the work and the exercises, and that's how you chip away at the block until you can see the form, and you're like, oh wow, I might actually have a book here now. So yeah, I just it was fairly terrifying. I put on a brave face, but I just bought a one-way ticket to India. I had no idea where I was going beyond a couple of days in New Delhi and then Dharamsala, India. Everything beyond that was a blank slate, and I just kind of moved with the wind and the people. You know, I basically just, the people I met and bounced off of and the ideas I came up against sort of guided me. So 15 months later, I came home. I only had about enough money to travel for 3 or 4 months, and 15 months later, I came home with more money than I left with. Volunteered for a guy who won the equivalent of 2 Nobel Prizes, like probably India's most important environmental lawyer, extraordinary human. And, you know, had countless experiences with the magical, the mystical, and the transcendent. Not to mention, you know, a lot of contraction and fear, but that's the whole point of the book, is like you come up against that and you push through the fear. I think the fear is always going to be there, but courage is stepping into the fear. So that's what I keep telling myself, especially as I'm about to take off to Mexico. And like, so yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, and since last time we talked, you mentioned that there are quite a few autobiographic like things in this book. Like, yeah. I had so many times when I was reading that I actually would have liked to ask you, really? This happened?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this book is full of serendipities and synchronicities in ways that almost sound sometimes unimaginable, but I know from things you've told me that these things in this or maybe a similar way really happened to you.
Yeah. I mean, as I say in the beginning, the truer part of the journey is the internal journey. there are definitely things that are fictionalized, but if I told you those things, that would take away from my mythopoeia, which is a beautiful word. That's the creation of story through myth. But I mean, a lot of it, I kind of, we both are familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And when I first started meditating, I used to get so frustrated because afterwards you'd hear about these incredible experiences, these internal experiences that people had. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm not doing it right. I'm not getting this.
Too.
And then,
yeah.
And then I finally realized at one point, oh, my kind of mystical experiences occur in my external world, and the way things just kind of line up. And really, I mean, that's how the book is really, I mean, I would say a lot of those things are true. The serendipities and the synchronicities. Granted, I am a storyteller as well, so I am weaving a narrative. Sometimes I have to do things to make the story move forward or to connect these things. But I was actually, in the many things that I'm doing to get out of the house and clean it for the person who's going to stay. Last night I was like cleaning the external part of my refrigerator and taking off all of these like magnets. And I was like, when you put when that magnet gets like so close, it just goes like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how when I can get out of my own way, which I get in my own way so much, I just kind of feel like that thing that I'm seeking, and it's like that magnetism, it's the synchronicity and the serendipity, and it's just like, the more I can let go, which is so hard, because sometimes I feel like I've got a chokehold on life, because I'm just like, when is this or that going to happen, and you want this relief from whatever your anxiety or uncertainty is. And the natural inclination is to like hold that tighter, but you have to find a way to let go and let that new energy move into your life. And so that's what I've been really kind of working on right now. And I'm starting to feel more open and loose about the situation. It's like, I'm just moving to San Miguel. I don't have an income. I have some money saved. I'll spend less money down there, but I've been in Seattle for almost 17 or 18 years, and I've been like, why is Seattle not, jiving with me? Why am I not clicking with Seattle? And it's kind of like it's become such a tech town that it's gotten so expensive. It's pushing out like the artists and the creatives. And I mean, of course, I have money to like, I could stay here for a while, but it's kind of it's a hustle. And when you're not doing the 9-to-5 job, and San Miguel is, I call it like Disneyland for artists. It's like so many art galleries and like Grammy award-winning musicians. I see so much amazing music down there, and really incredible creative vibe and people, and it attracts people from all over the world. So I don't know, I'm just, I thought, I've had like a long distance relationship with someone, this woman in Mexico City. So that is also a factor to kind of give this thing a shot, because I'll be 3 hours closer. So I thought like something like maybe the opening of the fourth line, the opening of the fourth book could be something like, it was a combination of love and money that drove me to Mexico, or something like that,
Uh-huh.
So I'm just, it's, I'm starting to, this all happened so fast. It happened within like 2 weeks or something like that, 3 weeks. Within 24 hours, the condition just showed up that this woman would take my apartment. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I can go somewhere and save a lot of money. But, gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Well, yeah, so I was feeling, every time I make these leaps, it almost feels like it's a bigger abyss, and I feel like there's more at risk. But I'm also kind of bringing myself to terms with the thought that it's like, okay, well, the bigger the risk, the bigger reward. And these are just kind of initiations, really, and opportunities to grow. And, I don't know. I hope maybe we talk in 6 months and some really incredible, extraordinary things happen. I have no doubt they will. I feel like something is moving towards me. So I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it has to do with the book. So it's been hard to get the word out, and I've been working on other stuff, so I haven't really been putting in enough time to market it, but I'm just kind of trusting that it's going to find the right people that it's supposed to find. And since I was like 17 years old, I sort of imagined and fantasized about how people would, like, if I could write a book, how they would consume it. And I wanted somebody to be sitting there in bed and not be able to turn the light off because they just keep reading it. And so many people, people have been like, oh my God. And I always imagine they would have an hour at least to consume it. But really, I think you just fall deeper into the story the more time you put into it. And I keep getting people you kept me up till 2 o'clock last night, reaching out to me and stuff like that. So it's really great to response, because I was so terrified this fall. Paralyzing fear, where I was kind of this is why people jump off bridges or become alcoholics when they're artists, because the anxiety of putting this rawness and honesty out into the world. If you're writing like what I am writing. So it's, it's a pretty, sometimes I don't like to think about how honest and vulnerable it is, but I've also always known, and those are the types of works of art that I connect with, that vulnerability, I think is really a strength, because if you can show that, then you can show other people that oh my God, I'm fearful of this too. And then when everybody realizes they're fearful of something, you're like, oh my God, we don't really have to be fearful of anything. It's just life,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it's totally encouraging just to see and feel that people who we feel drawn to, and we maybe feel like they are already a step 2 or 1,000 further in the direction that we would like to be ourselves, that they still have their challenges, and that it's basically part of the human experience that we often so much would like to get rid of. But yeah. I've been thinking to throw the first of my most favorite quotes of your book at you, and you can answer as Thomas or Tim Thomas, and that is, just use your feelings as a guidance system. Move toward that which brings you joy and expansion, and leave behind that which causes you friction and contraction.
Well, when you remove all the noise and everything in life, it's sort of like the most obvious thing, isn't it? It's sort of based on, when I think about it, and I was thinking about this last night. I went to a Jesuit college, and there's St. Ignatius. I went to Loyola University in Baltimore, and there was one of his spiritual practices was the examen, and it's kind of reflecting on your. I think twice a day you're supposed to reflect on your life, and basically it's what brings you joy, move closer towards that. What causes you fear, anxiety, move further away from that. And it's sometimes that's a job, sometimes that's people in your life, but it's just I think it's just about expanding your awareness at all times, and that spectrum between fear and joy is your awareness. So keep moving your awareness towards that which is brings you joy and opens your heart, because that's what life's all about, I think, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to feel crappy and fearful and um, anxious, like in a job that you're just miserable at. I mean, I've been in so many jobs where I just was like, oh my God, this is my life. This is, you know, felt like a prison sentence, but I just always, I always tried to fit into the corporate world, and I was like, maybe this is the job. Maybe this is the job that I'll click and I'll climb the ladder and all that stuff. But really deep down in my heart and soul, I knew I was always moving towards this right now, which is, you know, use my gift and also my craft that I've been developing for years to try and express something meaningful in the world, you know, and something that would, I forget the way I used to say it, but like move people, awaken them, make them laugh, think, and feel. And I feel like I've lived that. I am living my dream, and I'm kind of, again, when I get outside of like, oh my God, what's next? It's like, you know, and I'm planted squarely in the present moment. I'm like, oh my God, I'm awake in my dream, and I'm awakening more in my dream every day, because I talk a lot about like the dream of the 17-year-old. I'm sure we all had a dream of something when we were, you know, younger, and then life happens, and the complexities of adulthood happen, and jobs and every relationships, and but I kind of said, I think I said, like, it's, you know what a grappling hook is? It's like those, it's like a almost a gun with a 4 prongs on the end, and you shoot it up, and you could like it would land on a mountain, and then you would kind of like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was like I said in the book, like the power of the 17-year-old was sort of like shooting a grappling hook out into the future, and you know, it was like even when I was drifting left and right, this thing was kind of still pulling me forward, and I mean, I think I have no other choice, because it's like my nature, you know, well, the nature of any artist, I think, is to go inside to find these beautiful things, or, I don't know, essential qualities of life to bring to the surface, because it's really everything, like our entire worlds, our entire inner worlds are just this, this stew of feelings, and we express that through language and love and everything else. And my medium happens to be words, and hopefully I can say something meaningful that people can connect with, and you know, it moves them.
Yeah.
So.
And I think one thing that books can do, and I experienced it also with yours, is they can take you in a different reality. And in this different reality, you can feel more capable of doing things than you normally do. And it basically helps you to enter a whole different vibration. And I just, you know, I just loved taking off with Thomas and in his adventures. And one thing that I found very inspiring was Thomas keeping and having his gratitude and intention journal. And it inspired me to create one myself, and I really like it. And there, in your book, you say, pave your path with intention and gratitude, then get out of the way and let goodness happen. So can you explain the journal that Thomas has, and that maybe also our listeners would like to start doing, and what this thing is with gratitude and intention?
Well, after my mom passed away, you know, at one point in the book, I say something like, my mom was sick for a long time, and no matter how much you think you're prepared for a parent's death, when they actually pass away, it's like a tornado or a tsunami sweeps through your life, and no matter what you try to do to rebuild, something intangible is lost forever. So I thought I was prepared, but it just knocked the rug out from under me, and I felt so sort of lost, and my mom was kind of gone for a long time, but I was I was a I would definitely call myself a mama's boy. Like, I was the youngest by 9 years, and my mom and I had this really beautiful, special bond. But she just kind of faded away with sickness, and so anyway, make a long story short, I saw a friend of mine, a friend of my sister's, is like an energy healer. Her name's Sheila Bath, and she gave me this exercise. She's like, "You're a writer, okay? I want you to do 5 things every day. I want you to write down 5 things you're grateful for and 5 things you want to create." And she said, "You're going to be surprised that the things you create today are going to be the things you're grateful for in the future." So, I was just like, whatever, I'll try anything at this point. So I just went to a drugstore. I bought like a $2 notebook, and I just started writing things out. I started writing like, I want to be part of a documentary film crew. I want to volunteer for somebody. I want a windfall of money. And all of these, I was like, I want like a new MacBook Air.
Yeah.
And I wound up getting this job with this company. I had basically, like, in my journal, I was like, I surrender money, pay, whatever. I just want to be like freedom in my job and have a really cool team to work with. So that job showed up in like 2 weeks, because at the time I wasn't working. And it turns out that the designer that I worked with became one of my best friends, Matt Brown, and he's the guy who designed the cover of the book. And then my boss, Sean, it was a 3-month contract, and then he extended it to 6 months. And I was like, but that's it, I'm leaving at 6 months. I'm going to India. And right before I was about to leave, he was like, "Hey, would you be interested in working 10 to 20 hours a week while you're in India?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? This is amazing." Plus, I got a new MacBook Air from the company to use. So then I had miles. So at the end of 3 months in India, I flew home to surprise my family for a family reunion. And I swung through Seattle, and I went to my work for like 4 days. And my boss was like, he pulls me aside and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "you're going to need money to travel. Bill me for 30 hours a week for the last 3 months of your contract." So I wasn't even working, but I was just handing in these invoices for 30 hours a week. And then I went back to Vietnam to work with a friend of mine who's like a school photographer. He's like a school photographer at international schools. So then he was paying me $500 a week, free room, booze, board. And I'm like a backpacker staying at like these nice, like, business hotels and stuff. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I went back to, one of the things I wanted to create in my gratitude and intention journal was just like a stream of money. And I went back to Vietnam, and I was collecting 2 paychecks while traveling, and it was always my dream to just be able to like travel all over the world and get paid to write to do it. And I guess that happened in a very, 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 very different way than I ever imagined. I thought like I would have a book contract or like on an assignment for a magazine or something, but I mean, life's more interesting, I guess, when you let the magic happen, right?
Yeah, and isn't that the point with the unknown, that it is the unknown, and in some way you cannot expect it?
Yeah. I said in the book, magic can't happen where expectations live.
Yeah.
That's another hard part, because we're always sort of like forming this thing in our mind how we hope and wish it would be, but another thing to just try and get out of the way and let the mystery unfold. And I think that's kind of what I'm always writing. That's probably the crux of what I write about, the mystery of life, and I just try to explain it how I see it, and how it unfolds for me, and hopefully people get something out of that.
And I think personally that so many things have been said so many times, but it often needs exactly that one person because they say it in exactly that one way that you get it.
Yeah.
And one thing that I would like you to explain, and maybe that has a little bit to do with that, is you say we all know where to look for the answers, but most of us are afraid to go there. So why is it terrifying to go where the answers are?
That is a great question. Who wrote that?
Well, you know, there's this author, his name is Tim, and he wrote this cool book.
I got to meet this guy. Hey, read that one again.
We all know where to look for answers, for the answers, but most of us are afraid to go there.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't all look for the answers, but maybe we don't all know where to look for the answers, and maybe that's my role and not other people's roles, such as yourself. But I think a lot of people are looking for something external to fix them or heal them or make them feel relief from this internal experience of lack or whatever it is. But really, I think, and we live in such a crazy, also interesting and exciting, but also a crazy sensory overload time where it's just like boom, boom, ads at all times. You don't even know you don't even know you're being fed, being programmed. So it really, I think, especially in this time, and I think more and more people are doing it, like with a rise of yoga and meditation, and and it's amazing because something like this, I can have a conversation with you in Germany, and this can be all over the world in like seconds. So, I think like the key is just to find quiet and stillness, and to turn off the external world, because I think life happens. I think life happens in either whispers or giant thunderclaps. It's a lot easier to hear and see the giant thunderclaps, but maybe the whispers are the more important ones, and they probably happen a lot more often. Most of us are too busy distracting ourselves from, again, whatever that feeling is inside of them that drives them, and maybe that's the reason why. That's probably why vices exist, because they are trying to give themselves relief with this. If you drink, or you smoke, or you eat, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, this actually, my friend, I wrote this in the book, and we were on this hike, and he told me this story. He's like, have you ever heard about the woman who was searching for her lost sewing needle? And I was like, no. He tells me this, this fictional story or whatever, but he's like, this man's walking along the road and he sees this woman outside her house, and she's frantic and she's looking for her sewing needle. And he's like, okay, I'll help you. And after a long time of searching, he's like, where did you lose the needle? And she's like, inside the house. And they're like, why am I outside? Why are we outside looking for the needle? And she's like, because it's dark and I'm scared to go in there. Mm-hmm. I'm scared to go in there. It's like, the answers are not always easy to look at. I'm sort of in this enormous growth period right now, which will be great for my writing and everything like that. But growth is not easy. It is very uncomfortable. But I always like the saying, like, the pearl is born out of agitation. So, you just got to sit through the uncomfortable, sit through the fire, and at some point you get out on the other side and you're like, wow, all of that had to happen for this to happen, and where is this going? If that happened to get me here, and I keep, I'm jumping into the unknown again and just moving down to Mexico, and I keep thinking, like, oh my God, what if the magic runs out this time? Like, what if I don't do this anymore? Yeah, of course. I always, experience self-doubts because I'm not doing what most people are doing. You know, I sometimes wish I could just be happy in like a 9 to 5 desk job and, you know, have a 401k and, you know,
Yeah.
but I definitely, I know this is my calling really. So that's kind of what my third book will be about, the journey of the calling, which is moving into this much deeper space of trust and you know, trusting that the path will unfold. The red carpet will continue to roll out in front of me as I move forward and march towards whatever it is I'm marching. Greater degrees of self-expression.
Yeah, and speaking of being scared of the unknown and taking leaps into our life, there is this. Um, Thomas has this strange wheel that he is often dreaming about, but he never can look behind it. And at the end of the book, you write, it was not what was behind the wheel that terrified me. It was not the uncertainty of tomorrow. It was my free will, which I found super interesting. So what does that mean?
Um, well, I mean, you know, FOMO. You ever hear of FOMO? Fear of missing out. That is, I think, a state of anxiety, and it's like on a Friday night, do I do this or do I do this? You know, and it's. I think I was talking actually with this girl in Mexico City, and we were talking about the different paths of our lives, and I kind of it's a theory because I only know the choices I've chosen, but I kind of feel like at every time there's a fork in our lives, I feel like no matter which fork you take, it's going to take you on that external journey, but I feel like you're always going to wind up at the lesson you need to learn. And sometimes it might be a harder path to get there. But really it's just, it's like it all comes down to making choices. And I kind of got on a sidetrack. What is the quote or the question again? You don't have to read the whole quote, but.
No, why free will can actually be terrifying.
Yeah, well, because I think there's a responsibility behind it. When you actually decide to take ownership of your life, then maybe you have to make bigger and harder choices than you would if you were just la 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 drifting along in life. So, I mean, that's to take ownership of your life is kind of a scary thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, when I was a kid, pretty much my mom, you know, had ownership of my life. She decided all these things, but like now the responsibility rests on myself. And I have to make these bigger and greater choices. And so I think there's sort of this like existential fear or something like that. But I don't know. And then, you know, it all comes back full circle to surrender and trust. Create, surrender, trust. Create, surrender, trust. Create, get out of the way, which is the surrender, and trust that, you know, the highest good for your own life will show up. And you know, when I do my gratitude and intention journal stuff, I have definitely done things that are materialistic or something like that, you know, like a windfall of money or blah, 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 blah. But mostly I try to, excuse me, I try to, you know, I want like more joy in my life. I want deeper relationships. I want greater expressions of love or something like that. And, you know, and abundance, stuff like that, you know, and I just, I I create that thing and then I just let it, happen how it will. So I'm trying to, you said something the other day. You're like, oh, you should teach a course on serendipity or synchronicity. Wow, if I could figure that out, I would. But I kind of realized, like, oh wow, after you said that, I was like, wow, I am living the truth of my book. But really, it's not like I'm doing that intentionally. I have no other choice. It's just like who I am and how I live. Because, I mean, for me, this journey, me as the embodiment of Tim Shields in this life, it's like, as a writer and an artist, it's like it's my goal to go deeper within, and it's not only about going deeper within so I can put this thing out into the world, but going deeper within is like a journey. The journey into myself is the journey into God or Force or the unified field or whatever you want to call it. So, for some people it's like spiritual. It's like working with the homeless or something, or for me it's the journey inside. And that is a journey of surrender and trust, and that's what I'm trying my hardest to live. So it's not always easy, but when that thing happens, you're like, oh my God, it's happening, it's working, like, thank you.
Yeah, and that, I mean, when these things happen, I think there are few things that are more beautiful. It's like, I mean,
yeah,
this happened.
Yeah, because it's feedback that your internal world is creating your external reality.
Yes, right. And I have actually one last quote of your book that I wanted to ask you about it. And it's about order and chaos, which I find very interesting because whenever we embark on new adventure, life seems to get very chaotic. And at least I experience it that when I want to change something and I embark on it, not only that one thing starts to change, it's unsettling my whole life. And so towards the end of your book, you write, it's not about being afraid to lose yourself in the chaos of disorder while finding stillness in the order. I think I read it again. It's about not being afraid to lose yourself in the chaos of disorder while finding stillness in the order of the chaos. It's about asking the hard questions and being still so that you can hear the answers. Mm-hmm. And I think listening within can be quite a task if you feel like in the middle of a storm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always found, and I'm living it right now, the most chaos happens before, and it might not even be happening in your external world. You're talking kind of internally, but when you choose to make a big change in your life, or when you're gonna take off on a big adventure or something, like the nature of the mind to go through all of these scenarios, they're almost like doomsday scenarios or something. I don't do that as much anymore, but just it's just there's just so much fear because you're moving into the unknown. But it's always been my experience that as soon as you make the leap, the net appears. And I mean, the first 2 days, I kind of wrote about this in the book, but the first 2 days, Thomas was in India. I was like super jet lagged, and I didn't even have a Lonely Planet. And I was like, what have I done? This is the worst decision I've ever done in my life. What am I trying to prove, and to who? But I just kind of, I mean, it was almost immediate, like magic started happening. And so, yeah, again, it's like, and then once you get into it, you're like, wow, this is this is amazing. It's something new is unfolding. But leading up to that, it's just the unknown is a scary thing, but what's the opposite? The known. And if you're not happy in the known, if you're not happy in the known and the predictable, where you know the outcomes and you know the routine you're going to be getting into the next day, then you got to make choices and you got to make changes. And for me, all of these things I do, I think, are probably to come up against two things, which is moving through my own fear, because I really kind of considered myself like a fearful person. And I think it's like inherited from my mom. She was this beautiful, loving woman, but she was such a fearful person. So I remember one time when I first went to Africa, my sister was like, maybe, if mom could talk, and she was still, maybe she would have scared you out of doing this and stuff. And at another point, she was like, maybe all of these things that you do, like, to swing the pendulum in the other way, away from fear. And, so it's like coming up against my own fear. And the other thing is, again, it's like I do it all for writing, because I need to do interesting things to have something interesting to write about. I'm not interested in writing like the novel of this miserable person that goes to work every day. It's like there are some good, interesting stories out of that, but something always happens to make that character crack and move into something new. But I mean, I love learning people's stories. I love writing about their stories. I love learning about new cultures, and I've traveled quite a bit, and maybe because I've been to Mexico so much in the last year, it's one of my favorite cultures. But I'm sure if I was going to Cambodia like a couple times a year, I'd be like, that's my favorite culture. But I just love like Mexican culture, and the people are like very heart-centered, and everything's a celebration, and they're very family-oriented, and colors and music, fiesta, so tequila, mezcal. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm going down for kind of an open-ended period of time. So providing this person wants to stay in my apartment, which I think they will, and I have to come back in November for an event I'm doing at a bookstore, but I'm kind of planning on just staying down there, I guess, for a while, see how let magic unfold. But I was going to tell you one thing. Did you happen to read that that blog I just wrote called Architects, Ayahuasca, and Tinfoil?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. I just put it out. But I was talking about tinfoil as, let's see if I can communicate this.
What is tinfoil?
Like when something hot comes out of the oven and you take that piece of aluminum foil and you put it over like your meats or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was kind of imagining that being, let's say, the unified field or the quantum field, which is where all possibilities exist. And then imagine like, a phone or a block or something. So every time you have a thought, we are creating at all times, whether we realize it or not. Most of us are kind of unconscious of what we're creating. But so imagine you have this block, and here's the tinfoil, and every time you think, you're creating an impression in the field. So reality is actually conforming to your thoughts. So that's why it's so important to be like aware of what we're putting out at all times, because most people are putting out unconsciously fear and separation and lack. So I try to just do daily practices that help me continuously be more mindful, to be putting love out, to be putting connection, to be putting joy, things that bring greater things into the world. So, I mean, that's also a part of what the book is about. It's like, that is what the Gratitude and Intention Journal is. It's putting this feeling out into the field. And the more you do it, the more the field reality is malleable to who we're being. So it's like the more we do it, the more it takes that shape of who we want to become. So that's why it's so important to always be aware of who we're being and what we're putting out.
Oh yeah, and this is a beautiful metaphor because I can really imagine it like you are imprinting yourself on the field, and when you change, the imprint changes, and basically the whole life takes on that new shape.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you are thinking about imprinting yourself onto or into your new Mexican life, how does it feel for you? It's in 3 days, right? That you move.
3 days from now. Yeah. Exactly. It'll be good. I'm not, usually the reality of things, the reality of a big move doesn't happen until like the night I'm like finalizing all my packing and organizing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this. Or like in the airport. I'm just kind of imagining, like, I'm imagining some work showing up, maybe another book project, maybe a big book deal. But I'm just imagining walking around there being so full and abundant and like, just being able to spend money on whatever I want. And I plan on spending an hour a day in the library learning Spanish. And then, regardless, I'm writing every day. So I'll probably spend maybe, if I don't have another book project or some marketing work or whatever, I'm going to be working probably 3 to 4 hours a day on my new book. So, and also just, I'm imagining new rich relationships. I have some friends down there that are incredible. People who are sort of like living this work and don't even realize it. And I have this one friend, and he's always like, "You're so inspiring." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're like the most incredible artist ever. You are just an expression at all times." Painting, like he's this beautiful human being. So him and his girlfriend are like two of my favorite people. And then I have this other friend, Linda, down there, who's like 70 plus years old, and she's lived this incredible life. She was like worked at like a Playboy, Playboy mansion, and dated like one of the Eagles, and she's like a life coach now. And we always have we would always, go out to dinner once a week, and it was almost like I would get coaching from her, but she's just this amazing person. So I'm just hoping to run into more people like that, people that expand me and inspire me. And so that's all I'm imagining when I go into my meditations. I move into that feeling of just like abundance and freedom and creation and creativity. So.
And will you write about it on your blog?
Probably. Yeah. I think, I had this grand plan. I'm kind of disorganized, but I had this grand plan of like releasing like 15, 16 blogs leading up to my book being launched. And I've only released about 7 so far, but I've written 2 other ones, and I think I'm going to be doing a lot more blogging down there. And my book started out as a blog while I was traveling. So for me, I'm trying to keep these blogs short. Like the last one I wrote is about 1,000 words, but I'm trying to keep them under 500 words. But when I was traveling, my blogs would be like 8,000 words, But for me, it was like a way to get the material out of me and to remember all these things that are happening in the moment. So for me, my blogs, when I've traveled, has always been sort of a first draft. Yeah, I feel like I'm in like moving into a new creative, expansive state. So I feel like a lot of things are gonna come out of me, and they have been, but they've just been going into my journal. I haven't had the time to kind of formalize them, but you should definitely check out the last blog number 7 and blog number 8 I wrote, and then blog number 2 I applied for about this time last year. It's called Places and Spaces. Mm-hmm. And I applied to a job at the New York Times, and they asked for a 500-word essay on the most interesting place you've ever been. So instead of actually writing about a place, I wrote about the most interesting place you've ever been is not actually about the place. It's about your awareness and your state of being, who you are when you're there. So that's kind of a cool one to check out. Number 2, number 7, and number 8.
Which
so
brings, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, which brings me to just what I actually wanted to ask you anyway. So where and how can all these people who are watching and listening find out more about you and about the adventures that you're embarking on now?
My website is acuriousyear.com, which is the first couple words of the book, acuriousyear.com. My Instagram is ink, I-N-K, and edit. And you can, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, I should probably put them higher up, but if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of my website, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and hopefully I will get more into these things, because it's, when you're going to like pitch for podcasts and stuff, it's only happened once, but they're like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have a big enough Instagram following. I'm like, really? I'm like, if I spent all this time developing my Instagram, how am I going to write and be an artist? Like, we live in this just crazy consumer world or something like that. But I'm just going to try and stick to what I do best, which is writing, and just, I think if I just keep putting the word out, people are going to want to find me and connect with me anyway. So just keep doing my thing and put my energy into writing and creating rather than building or paying for an Instagram following. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
it really is.
Yeah. So.
Yep, and we will link to your website and to the social media channels and to the book site right below this interview, so everybody can find you. And before we close this beautiful conversation, I wanted to ask you if we forgot to touch on something that maybe was important or is important and still needs to be mentioned. Is there anything we missed?
I'll probably think of 27 of them after. But no, I think this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and it's a wonderful way to start my week. It's probably, it's 10:15 a.m. here. What time is it where you are?
7:15 p.m.
Okay, well, it's basically the start of my Monday and the start of a week where I'm moving. So I really appreciate this beautiful conversation we had. Thank you for your time.
Me too. I appreciate it a lot. And I'm thanking you from my heart for sharing this time and space with me.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure's mine.
Beautiful book.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
or as we say in Spanish, el placer es mío. I know about 10 Spanish phrases, so that's the pleasure is mine. But time to start learning Spanish. I know a bunch of swears and a bunch of slang words, but I should probably actually develop more communication skills when so.
And it's so, I like Spanish a lot. I don't really speak it, but I think it's an incredibly beautiful and musical language.
It is, yeah. So I'm looking forward to learning it.
Yeah. And so with all this beautiful conversation, goodbye, everybody. And always remember to take the driver's seat of the car called your life and create this lifetime to your taste. It's our pleasure here at Mind Gourmet to support you with our food for thought. Bye, Tim, and bye, everybody.
Thank you.